Lesson 29. Last week we talked about Pratyahara, mostly in general. Today we have a look at 4 different approaches. Pratyahara, detachment. It's clear how important Pratyahara is, especially for people who develop increasing consciousness and sensitivity, which yoga is leading to. So it's one of the most important limbs of yoga that is also one of the most neglected subjects. Yattamana Pratyahara is progressive detachment. It is an approach in which you very consciously and deliberately take distance from an attachment, a relationship, or a memory that connects you with the past. In order to free yourself up for the present and the future. The reason why Pratyahara is so important in relation with the past is the past can become an obstacle, a blockage, a prison. I've given some examples throughout this course. One of which is the example of within my own family, my younger sisters and the whole entourage around them. 30 years later, 35 years later, still constantly grabbing back to the high school days. Also, my Hapkido friends. We have a WhatsApp group. We are communicating with each other. Some years ago, 2018, they visited, 6 of them. It's kind of cute, but also sad to see how they still make the same jokes, the same remarks, how they are still imprisoned in that thought of Hapkido, of Korea, something that I've left behind long ago because I moved on. Very important in that process was coming to Korea, pursuing my goals, and then they lost significance. For them, 35 years later, it's still important. And why this is an issue is because what we talk about in yoga is the self with a capital S. Self-study that we discussed in the beginning of the course as a natural consequence of your increasing consciousness, which always starts with curiosity about the self and the past, your childhood, your experiences, good and bad. The crown chakra is the location of our true characteristics. Those characteristics in most people do not manifest. As a yoga practitioner, they will manifest because you connect. You develop what we call soul consciousness. Soul consciousness is connection with your true self, with a capital S, with your true characteristics. As long as you keep yourself busy with the past, as long as you keep yourself busy with memories, there is no room to manifest. It is this past, this memory, that forms the obstacle that does not allow you to manifest your true characteristics. So there is a clash of interest here, and yoga says, don't live in the past. You might have good memories, nostalgia and what have you, or bad memories that also deserve to be honored, to be respected. But if you stay there, if you allow them to determine your life, you'll never be able to move on. You'll never be able to manifest your full potential. So it has a very practical purpose. And therefore, it is very important to become aware of this and then try to gradually integrate this into our lives. So progressive detachment, it applies to your high school years, for example. It's normal. You had a good time, you made most of your friends. So it's good that you sometimes revisit this. But it is also important that you realize you're not a high school student anymore. So try deliberately, consciously to create some distance. Allow yourself to have a taste of it sometimes, but not whenever it pops up, but whenever you choose to allow it to happen. That's control. And that's what yoga is all about. It's about control. I've talked about the example of southern France. Things have changed in the meantime. That's about 35 years ago that I went there several summers in a row. Those generations probably do not exist anymore. But the older men in the village square who could not stop talking about the war. And every evening that you would go there to have a beer or a pastis in the village cafe, where basically it's the center of town where everybody gathers and communicates. Every time you hear the same stories, stuck in the past. But this is an extreme example, but those people are dysfunctional. They've never been able to have a proper career or even have a functional family. So it's kind of an extreme example, but you're talking about trauma here, and trauma is not something to be underestimated, but at some point you have to say enough is enough. I need to move on. And maybe you can keep some photographs that you do not display, but put them somewhere, because if you display them, every time you look at them, you are being drawn back into the past. Honor the past, honor the trauma, but move on. It's a duty that you have to yourself and your loved ones, because your loved ones are suffering with you if you regurgitate the traumatic experiences of war. In the best case scenario, you use your experiences to do something good for other people that are going through the same kind of experience. You maybe have work for an NGO or a trauma center, or in any case try to work for people using your experience and the lessons that you learned to help other people overcome, deal with their trauma. Also, less extreme, but you work somewhere, a couple of months, couple of years, you have connection with your colleagues, you have lunch together, sometimes you have weekend events, you go out with each other, have some meal, drinks, what have you have a connection, you have friends. But most people do not always stay in the same company. We move on. We want to progress, maybe earn more, or we move to another location that it's not reasonable to commute that far anymore. But you miss your colleagues, and that is normal, like you miss your school friends. In the beginning, you go back and visit, have a coffee with them and chat maybe once a month. But when you realize that it's holding you back, when you realize that it's something that you find difficult to detach from, then you very deliberately try to extend the period. So while in the beginning you go once a month, you just decide one day to now wait for 2 months before you visit again. And maybe you do that a couple of times, and then you say, well, now I will wait 3 times before I go back and visit them again. And you will see, if you guide the process in this very conscious and deliberate way, at some point the need to actually revisit the past just fades away very naturally. If this approach doesn't work, we go to the next step. That is Vyatireka Pratyahara. And Vyatireka means exclusive. Exclusive Pratyahara applies especially to addictions. Relationships are also addictions. Memories of the past, very clearly, are also addictions. We like the nostalgia, the nostalgic feeling that comes. We like to wail. We like to shower in those sentiments. So clearly also addictions, but let's keep it to something very practical and something that I spontaneously did after I started practicing yoga. Exclusive detachment means that you focus, investigate that one issue that is bothering you. I was smoking since I was a child, basically. As a teenager, I discovered yoga. I became very conscious. I started to investigate myself. I also very naturally started to investigate what's good for me and what's bad for me. So I developed an interest in food. And I read lots of articles and books about food, about nutrition. And you change your food pattern. You change your diet. But of course, definitely, alcohol, drugs, smoking are things that are quite destructive, can be quite destructive. So I started practicing yoga, and I immediately, just as a feeling, I started to reduce the amount of cigarettes that I would allow myself to smoke. Because I've always been interested in sports, and the two didn't really go well together. When I started practicing yoga and took control of the direction of my life, I also started exercising more. And I then, before I learned about Pratyahara from Ajita, I kind of spontaneously put it into practice by investigating what's bad about smoking. And I used to write down A4 size paper every negative aspect of smoking and put them on the wall above my desk. And it is shocking how many negative aspects there are to smoking. At some point there were at least 30 to 40 A4 pieces of paper, each containing one negative aspect of smoking. But what this does, investigate, because stop Everybody who has smoked or is smoking knows how difficult it is to stop smoking. I was able to reduce it a little bit, but I couldn't stop. I wanted to stop. What this does is it hammers home all the important reasons why you would want to stop, in this case, smoking. You can apply this to anything, even to a personal relationship. Write down all the negative aspects of that relationships, so that you're very conscious of your motivation and your reasons, whether you should continue or not. But if you only have so many negative aspects, and you actually cannot really come up with one good aspect, it's clear that you want to stop that habit. By writing it down, something happens internally that gives you a natural willpower, a handle to take control. Now what I didn't stop from one day to another, because every smoker knows that that doesn't work. But I took control. I very consciously reduced. One of the things that most smokers do is when they wake up, the first thing they need to do is smoke before doing anything else. Then you start with a cup of tea, coffee, or breakfast, but first a smoke. So I postponed my first smoke from waking up to after breakfast. And having done that for a couple of weeks, I just didn't feel good about it. I wanted to reduce it more, so I postponed my first cigarette to 10 o'clock, coffee time. Doing that for a little while, I then postponed it to after lunch. Doing that for a little while, I postponed it to after tea time, 4 o'clock. And then after dinner, 6:30. And in the end, I smoked one cigarette in the evening, but not the whole cigarette. In the Netherlands, we have tobacco pouches. You make your own cigarettes. It's more economic than buying ready-made cigarettes. I would just roll my own, but then just put half the tobacco in. I would just make half. I would just roll half a cigarette and just have a couple of puffs and snuff it out. And at some point, just one day, just very naturally, without any struggle at all, I didn't need it anymore. It was a process. It took almost a year, but without struggle, without symptoms of withdrawal or just very naturally, but in a very playful way, taking control, reducing, and just suddenly the karma was burnt up, as we say. The need was not there anymore. So, like I said, you can apply this to any addiction: drinking, drugs, smoking, relationships, and also memories. The issue that we talked about in the first step, Yatamana Pratyahara, memories, issues that you have with the past, attachments that you have with the past. Write down what that does with you, even if it's good. If you have good sentiments, good memories, nostalgia, what have you, melancholia, write it down. As a result of your conscious engagement with these processes, even though it seems that you are dealing with positive memories and sentiments, you will see that the distraction, that the blockage that it's actually forming to function in the present and towards the future, that is actually not a positive aspect. And that realization that you will have as a result of your conscious engagement, that will lead you to naturally want to distance yourself from that, detach yourself from that. If this doesn't work, we have the third step. That is Ekandriya Pratyahara. Ekandriya Pratyahara, Eka means one. And Indriya are the senses. So you're going to focus, this is a little bit scientific. You're going to focus on how your attachment is related to the senses. And you do that very systematically, starting with smell. When you talk about smoking, you try to figure out whether it is possibly smell that makes you attracted to smoking. Now, when I went through this process, the first thing that I realized why I started smoking as a child was because my parents smoked and it filled the house with that nice aromatic smell. I do not think anymore that it is a nice aromatic smell. I don't like it anymore. But as a child, it was kind of an attractive smell. And children often copy their parents' behavior. I grew up in a time, I was born in a time that there was no question about smoking being bad. People visited each other and the first thing that came on the table was a cigarette. And you want to smoke? I vividly remember when the house, the living room was filled with visitors, neighbors, uncles, aunts, whenever there was something to celebrate. And everybody was smoking, with the children crawling over the floor. Everybody was smoking. The house was just filled with a blue cloud, a thick blue cloud, and nobody thought anything of it. How times have changed. But smell, in case of smoking, that is definitely an element. In case of food, in the Netherlands you have these snack bars. Streets are filled with that very attractive smell of fried foods, or the fresh bakery shops that you not only have in the Netherlands, but in France they bake fresh bread 3 times a day, so that the streets are filled with the smell of fresh bread, and that is just, it's so delicious. It's difficult to resist. We come back to that in the 4th step as well. So smell, then you have taste, the 2nd chakra from the bottom. That definitely applies to food, of course, taste. Also to smoking, although my realization was that smoking smells nice, but the taste is horrible, and yet you continue smoking anyway. The taste was horrible, but with food and drinks, taste can be the element that makes you attracted to it. Smell, taste, and then the visual aspect. Visual aspect, in case of smoking, when I was young, smoking was glamorous. And because there was so much money involved in the tobacco industry, they had huge advertisement campaigns with smoking was made glamorous. With Marlboro had the famous Marlboro cowboy in the prairie on a white horse with his big cowboy hat on his head and a cigarette in the corner of his mouth. That guy died from lung cancer, of course. But that appealed especially to men, to male strength, macho-ness. But you had Stuyvesant. Stuyvesant was a cigarette brand that appealed to the burgeoning intercontinental travel. So there was about people that would fly around the world and global citizens and just appealing to people's ego, really, because that is Manipura chakra, is ego, visual aspects. These are things that we are often not aware of at all. So if you do this in a very conscious way and a very systematic way, just see what it is which sense is involved. Is it the smell? Is it the taste? Is it the visual aspect? And then choosing deliberately to divert your attention away from that attraction. Above the heart, above the diaphragm, you have the heart chakra also. Touch, addicted to touch. Children have teddy bears for that reason. And I'm from a big family. We had 2 teddy bears, but the fluffiest one was mine. I had to share it, of course, but I loved fluffy things, soft, woolly things. I had my own blanket. That was the wooliest, softest, fluffiest blanket, and I still have it. Touch. Now, I cannot really describe something very negative in relation to touch. But human beings need touch. Touching pleasant things creates harmony in the heart chakra. That is why satin and what's that stuff? What's that stuff called that is made from the silk? From silkworms. That's why silk is so expensive. It's not only difficult to make it, people love to feel that on their skin. And the reason why is because it makes our heart sattvic, so it gives a sense of well-being, it gives a sense of love. So maybe if you're addicted to luxury and expensive things while you cannot really afford it, then it can be an issue, and it can be related to touch, definitely so. Because expensive things, luxury things, they are attractive because of the things that we are talking about here. Visual aspect often, of course, but touch, using good quality materials. People love that. Why? It feels good. And hearing, the chakra related to the throat, the sense of hearing. You can see that the heart chakra and the throat chakra are not as dramatic as the 3 chakras below the diaphragm when it comes to our attachments, because those are the chakras related to lower emotions and especially desires. But the higher chakras are related to emotions and desires, but we call them higher emotions and desires. Hearing, being attached to something because of hearing. Music. I barely listen to music anymore, and the music that I listen is not related to my past. But what music do people like most? It's the music that they were exposed to during their most dynamic development stage. So that is your teenage years and early 20s. So for me, that is music from the 70s and early 80s. And of course, that music is much better than the music they produce today. Everybody will say that about their own developmental stage. I'm just making a joke about it. But if I listen to that music, it just carries me away, and I don't like that anymore. Because it makes me unstable. It makes me want to cry. It makes me emotional. And in the past, I enjoyed that. Just like other people enjoy that. That's why you shovel out a huge amount of money to go to your favorite artist. Look on YouTube and you see all those artists from the 70s and 80s, they are still performing. The audience is people my age. They love to go back into the past. And don't get me wrong, it's not wrong, it's not bad. But when you become addicted to it, when it becomes an obstacle, then you need to step away from it and focus more on the here and now. So hearing related to higher emotions and desires, yeah, it can be a big distraction, a big obstacle. Music that I like, that is not affecting me in a negative way, is Enigma, for example. You know Enigma? Or Deep Forest. It's a new age music, but very dynamic. And both these musics were used, especially Enigma has been used for movies and series and what have you, and people have no idea where that music is from. And when I say that's Enigma, oh yeah, never knew. Gorgeous music and very spiritual. It just makes your energy go up, like yoga makes your energy go up. And the original purpose of music is, of course, spiritual. Music that makes your energy expand and rise. Now the purpose of music is to make money. Yes?
But what's the difference? I don't see the difference.
Difference with what?
I mean, if I find Enigma being good and I'm attached to Enigma music, what's the difference in being attached to BTS, for example?
It depends on what it does with you. That's up to you to decide. Enigma or Deep Forest doesn't do anything negative to me. While listening to Pink Floyd or all those British bands that you had in the late 70s and early 80s who made wonderful music, that's really something of that time frame, was especially the British bands. Eurythmics and Brian Ferry. There are so many.
No, I get it, but I'm just trying to understand if going back in music brings back sad memories because you related to a time that maybe you weren't happy.
Yep.
Or whatever, one
Yep.
time you don't want to go back to.
Yep.
The running away from that, right? It's as bad as pretending it never happened.
No, but that's also not what I'm suggesting. Everybody interprets this in their own personal way. The message here is, as soon as you come to the conclusion that it is an obstacle, it's clear that you need to do something about it, and that's why we need Pratyahara. As long as you enjoy it and you don't see anything negative about it, for God's sake, enjoy it. That's what we have always done. That's what I have always done until it became an obstacle. And what I'm also doing, because that is the best way that I can explain, is using examples from my own life that maybe do not connect with you. But if you reflect on the issue after class, you will see that you have your own experiences and examples that relate to the subject. For me it's smoking, for me it's music, but it can be something totally different for each individual. It will be something different for each individual. Yeah? All right, the last one is the one that I like most. That is Vashkara Pratyahara. The explanation in the handout is very short, but it's the one I like most just because you are allowed to be human and you're allowed to play. And I mentioned the traditional bakery shops in Amsterdam that start baking bread very early in the morning, filling the streets with the smell of fresh bread and pastry. The snack bars in the Netherlands, Dutch snacks are particularly deep fried, almost all of them. If you go to a Dutch snack bar, what you see in the display window is almost everything is something that's going to be tossed into the deep fryer. And that smell that comes is just very tempting. Now, it's not bad to enjoy food because that's also spiritual. But everybody knows if you overdo it, if you eat too much in one meal, your energy crashes. If you eat delicious food, like snacks are delicious, they're not particularly healthy. So enjoy them once in a while, but you know that if you enjoy them every day, that it might in the long term do something with your health, with your condition. As a yogi, you become aware of that, inevitably. And almost everybody has an attraction to food. Who doesn't like delicious food? I haven't met somebody who said, I don't like eating at all. So, this Pratyahara suggests that you challenge yourself. Consciously is the key word. That you go to the place that sells your favorite food, that you consciously smell up, sniff up the smell, the attractive smell, that you consciously look at people consuming the food item that you love, your favorite food item, and that you then try to decide for yourself that it's enough and that you walk away. In the bakery shop, for example, I go to the bakery shop, I buy 2 loaves of whole wheat bread because that's healthy. But bakeries, they're not stupid. The bread is behind them. They have these racks behind against the back wall where all the breads are stored, all the healthy stuff. But straight in front of you in the display window are all the pastries, all the sweet things and creamy things and well, the things that you would like to bring home instead of the whole wheat bread, of course. And they do that for a reason, of course. You buy 2 whole wheat bread and you order something that is not on your shopping list. You come home with a couple of pastries. Now, it's okay to enjoy delicious pastries once in a while. That's kind of a treat. And if you do that once in a while, it really doesn't affect you or your health in a negative way. Only if every time you pass by the bakery shop, you can't resist and it's okay. But as a yogi, you now become conscious, you go home and you enjoy the pastry, first and foremost, no guilt. Even though you've decided that, you shouldn't do that every day and you started practicing yoga, you become conscious, more sensitive, etc. You're still human. What people then do is beat themselves up. Oh my God, and I'm a total failure and I can't help myself. No, just enjoy it. But from now on, enjoy consciously. That is a concept in yoga, you know that? It's called bhoga. B-H-O-G-A, bhoga. That is the enjoyment of the yogi. You enjoy everything that other people also enjoy, but you do it consciously. You drink wine? Drink it. Enjoy it. But now, you're going to pay attention how it affects you. What is it that you enjoy about the drinking of the wine? Is the taste, a little bit tipsy, nice. But you're also conscious of the fact that if you drink more than a certain amount, for me it's more than 1 glass, leads to negative effect. So I stop at 1 glass. Sometimes I want to drink a little bit more, then I allow myself to do that. But I know that I'm going to have to pay for that. I don't drink whole bottles anymore, or 15 glasses of beer anymore. I did that when I was young, but it doesn't feel good. If you need to recover 2-3 days from a binge, maybe you enjoy that for a while, but it's very depressing actually. So you get a hold on it, you take control of it. Bhoga means enjoying whatever it is that you like, but you do it consciously. And when you do things consciously and you notice that it is having a negative effect on you, you very naturally want to curb that. Doesn't mean you have to stop eating pastries or drinking beer or wine or French fries. I love French fries with a wad of mayonnaise. In Netherlands, we don't eat it with ketchup, we eat it with mayonnaise. It's a feast, so simple, fried potato with mayonnaise. But if you eat too much of it, it feels like you have a rock in your stomach. So enjoy these things, but consciously evaluate how it affects you. And when you become aware of that, you naturally want to control it. Not too often and not too much whenever you allow yourself to indulge. And when you do indulge, you enjoy it without beating yourself up or feeling guilty. It is very important that you start accepting that you're only human. Being a yogi doesn't make you superhuman. On the contrary, you'll be more human than ever. And you have to stop beating yourself up. I think what I always do, I'm not sure if I did that in this course. I'm pretty sure I did. In the very first class, when we talk about non-violence, I tell my students that one of the first things that we need to do as yoga practitioners, yoga students, is we have to become our own best friend. That means accepting yourself with all your good points and bad points. Accepting yourself just as you are, as a human being, with your weaknesses. And from there, you can only go up. Because our worst enemy, and this applies to practically everybody, I'm pretty sure, our own worst enemy is ourselves. It's not the people that criticize us, try to chop us down. We are our own worst critics often. And it's devastating. We do that subconsciously, and that is where it goes wrong. When you become aware of that, you smile. Smile at your weakness. Smile at your imperfection. I'm only human. It is this that leads to improvement. It is this that leads to increasing consciousness, improvement. Beating yourself up only makes things worse. Feeling guilty only makes things worse. Makes us want to eat more, makes us want to get drunk more. Right? Play. And this applies not only to this. Playfulness is the weapon of the yogi. Look at the Dalai Lama, look at Bishop Tutu, Desmond Tutu. They're like little children. They're giggling and dancing and playing and joking. That is the tool of the yogi. And that is how you deal with imperfections. All right, questions? You know where that playfulness comes from? From the crown chakra. A person who claims to be a spiritual leader, but is very dark and gloomish and no sparkle, no joy, no playfulness, they're not truly spiritual. Spiritual people naturally have energy in the crown chakra. Light-heartedness is part of that package. That is why you see people like the Dalai Lama, of course, and Desmond Tutu, they stand out because they're world famous. But it's a characteristic of truly spiritual people. Playfulness, joy, even when they're old. Especially when they're old, because normal old people generally, there is no vitality, there is no sparkle anymore. And there is a clear contrast between the spiritual old people and the normal old people. And one of the outstanding characteristics is is playfulness, joking around. And it is also the way to deal with ego-related things. Self-mockery is how we deal with ego-related things. That is why they invented things like Mr. Bean. You go through your daily life being serious, dealing with your work and people and what have you. You come home, and you play Mr. Bean on your laptop or computer or TV. There are many Mr. Beans, of course. I'm talking about humor. I'm talking about comedy. Comedy seems to be very frivolous, but it has a very powerful purpose. And that is to relieve people from their tension, to relieve people from their ego. All right, let's have a short break.